Alrighty. Welcome in to today's training. This one is capturing data for McKinney-Vento storytelling. And this is the first time that we are offering this session. We will be offering this topic again 3 more times between now and September. Dates TBD, but stay tuned. We want to start off today with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit the area today. Building changes, although we are a statewide organization, we are based in Seattle, which is the land of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people. At this time, if you want to take a moment to see whose native land you're on, and then as well at the same time introduce yourself in the chat. So put your name, your pronouns, your role in your school, and whose land you're on into the chat. Samie just dropped a link with how you can find whose land you're on if you're not aware at this time. All right, so while we're getting all of your introductions in the chat so we can see who's in the room today, just a couple of Zoom housekeeping things. We've got, if you're seeking clock hours for this training today, please be sure that your name in Zoom matches the name in PD Enroller. If you need to change that, you can do so with those 3 little dots if you hover over your face. In PD Enroller attendance, I believe, is still open throughout this training, so you can still register there. And if there's anything weird going on there, follow up with me after the training. As usual, please make sure you're muted when you are speaking. Take breaks as needed. We will have a break about in the middle. But if you need to take care of something, student comes in, whatever it is, we understand. And there are live transcripts available. You may already be seeing them, and you can also hide the subtitles or change the size as you need. Please use the reaction buttons as we go through today. We have a lot of fun with them and love seeing you. So if you're really agreeing with something, you know, you can add a little clap up there, a heart, whatever it may be. And then we will use the raise hand function during kind of question time, kind of inviting folks to come off chat. Seeing a couple different reactions here. I love it. And we're going to have time for questions kind of throughout. And if you also have questions arise, please just pop them in the chat and we'll try and answer them as we can. And if we don't have an answer now, we'll try and figure out how we can connect you to someone who may. There's no such thing as bad questions, so please be sure get those in. Somebody else may be thinking it too. We also have a very wonderful group of guest speakers today that I'm sure a lot of you will want to engage in conversation with and have some questions for. So a little bit about building changes. Many of you may have been in spaces with us before. We've done a lot of trainings at this point, and we're excited to be doing more. But we are a statewide organization focusing our work at the intersections of housing crisis, education, and health. With racial equity at the center of all that we do. This infographic here showing that 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color really just continues to help ground us in that work of understanding how we can keep racial equity at the center. So research has shown that doubled up students have equally poor academic outcomes as their literally homeless peers, meaning that housing stability is a key factor in furthering student learning and academic outcomes. So if we're thinking about 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color, that's including doubled up families. That's just very disproportionate to our communities. So we use this focus on equity and targeting strategies for students of color, and it's absolutely vital for stabilizing our McKinney-Vento population and will benefit all students. How we got here today. We're doing trainings in partnership with OSPI, and we're excited to continue to offer more. This is actually our last new topic, So feeling pretty excited. We have developed 7 trainings, and we will be continuing to offer each of those again with some slight adjustments as we go through, and things change. But if you've been to a previous topic, so let's say you've come to this training, you don't need to come to this topic again unless you really want to. But we definitely recommend you invite other folks from your community to join us. And then looking at our agenda today, we're going to go through a bit of a research talk. We will then hear from Tukwila School District, Clover Park School District. We'll take a little bit of a break. Then we'll hear from Spokane, do a little bit of key takeaways, and then we're going to have time to share some strategies with each other in breakout rooms, and then come back for a larger group discussion. And I did see a question from me in the chat. Yes, we will be sharing the PowerPoint afterwards. I'll send a follow-up email later today or tomorrow with the slides, and all the links that we share should be hyperlinked in those slides as well. And then here are our objectives for today, as we listed them in PD Enroller. And I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Matt Lehman, Building Change, Director of Research and Evaluation, he, him pronouns. Really pleased to be with you all here today. So before we kind of jump into the main content, I just wanted to set a little context. So part of the reason we're doing this training, talking about how you can use data to better tell the story of the needs and experiences of the students experiencing homelessness in your district, is based on the idea that using data can better support outcomes for those students. So what you're looking at here on this slide is a graphic from a study that we did back in 2020. So the graphic there is, each of those little dots is a school in Washington State. And what we did is an analysis, we did a regression-based analysis looking at outcomes for students. So we looked at test scores, graduation, and regular attendance rates. Did some controls to see, which schools were doing a little bit better than expected, and those are the blue dots on the right, or a little bit worse than expected. Based on that regression, those are the orange dots on the left. Once we identified those schools, we did interviews. So we talked to McKinney-Vento liaisons primarily from each of those schools or districts to find out what practices they were using, what practices were they putting in place that were really kind of driving those better outcomes for students. And there's a few different outcomes, or a few different practices, I should say, that we identified that were associated with a little bit better outcomes. One of them was using data, and specifically using data in an embedded, frequent, and systematic way, and really using that to drive decision-making. And so that's part of the reason we're doing the training today, is we really think that if you are able to use data more effectively, it can really improve outcomes for students. And go ahead, next slide, Jody. And next slide again. And so before we jump in, some of the talks later today are going to be about internal data, right? So you've got a lot of data either in your district or in your organization, if you're a community partner, that can really illuminate a lot of what's going on with the students that you're serving. But beyond that, beyond the kind of internal data that you have, there's a lot of data resources out there that can help you really identify the context that you're operating in, help you understand a little bit better the bigger picture of homelessness in your community. So we're just going to kind of quickly run through a few resources here, a few kind of education resources, and then also a few resources around homelessness generally in the community. And you can see the links down at the bottom there on the slide. And as Joey said, these will be in the PowerPoint that we send out, and you'll be able to access these. So the first one that we wanted to talk about is the OSPI Washington State Report Card. And so this is a really great resource. It's updated a couple times per year, might be a little bit out of date at times. So if you are a district, maybe consult your internal data team first for your specific data. But what's really useful about this is it helps you compare your district or your school to other districts or schools in the state. And it helps you see kind of trends over time in a really nice graphical format. So the key feature here is that you can compare data for students experiencing homelessness versus house students over time. You see the graphic there, the one at the bottom, kind of shows you since 2016-17 school year, the outcomes. I believe this one is regular attendance. Other things you can see on here are enrollment counts, other academic outcomes. You can see assessments, graduation, 9th grade on track rate, etc., and non-academic outcomes, regular attendance and discipline. And you can see this at both the state level for all the students in the state, at a district level and a school level. One key thing to note here is depending on the particular size of the population in your school or other schools you might be looking at, there might be some data suppression as well. Go ahead, next slide. Another great resource out there is a different report that we did. This is our K12 Outcomes Report. We typically do this annually. The current version that we have is through the 2018-19 school year. Prior to the pandemic, we are expecting a new version to come out next year with some updated data through the most recent school year. And this is similar in some ways to the kind of statewide report that you can see on OSPI's report card, but we cut the data in a little bit different ways, and you can see a little bit more detail on specific populations. So specifically, we're able to show outcomes for students experiencing homelessness by race and ethnicity, by nighttime residence. So that's what the graphic there is. You can see this is regular attendance rates for students doubled up or unsheltered in shelters and hotel motel. And then we also are able to show by grade level and by location type. So whether your district is categorized as a rural district or a city district or a suburban district. Go ahead, next slide. Another great resource is another resource that we put out. This is our local data dashboard. And so this board is a great kind of snapshot summary level data that shows data kind of aggregated in a few different geographic locations that might differ from some of the other resources out there. So the OSPI report card, for example, you can see the state and district level and the school level. This one, we are also able to show it at the county level and at the legislative district level if you want to do any advocacy with some of your local representatives. And so the data on here that you can find is the total number of students in that geographic location. So for example, about 2,000, just over 2,000 students were experiencing homelessness in Yakima County in 2018-19. Then you can also see the percentage of the total student population that represents the percentage of those students that are students of color, a little bit on grade level and nighttime residence. So you can see the majority of folks are doubled up there. And then we've got some academic outcomes at the bottom. So we have regular attendance rates, English and math assessment proficiency rates, and then on time 4-year graduation rates. Go ahead, next slide. Another great resource out there is the Healthy Youth Survey. So far we've really been covering kind of academic data, kind of looking at those key indicators that folks track for student success in the education system. This kind of broadens that lens a little bit and really focuses on some of those social emotional factors that can really illuminate the kind of holistic picture of how students are doing. So this one specifically has data on just so many different topics. So things like school climate, community safety, mental health outcomes like anxiety and depression, substance use, nutrition, has internet usage, physical activity, and a lot more. One thing to note about this is that the data that you're able to see is based on students experiencing housing insecurity. So that's a self-identified question that they have on there, and it differs a little bit from the standard McKinney-Vento definition. So you might want to, kind of use a little bit of caution when comparing directly, but it does give you a sense of those students that are a little bit housing insecure and what their outcomes look like in comparison to students that have stable housing. Another thing to note here is that the analytic reports on this, specifically for housing insecurity, are available for students in grade 8, grade 10, and grade 12. And so the younger students, unfortunately, do not have data on this one. And go ahead, next slide. And then finally, there's a wealth of data out there on homelessness generally. So you can, the next slide here will show you kind of links for various counties across the state. And this is really going to be data on folks experiencing homelessness using the HUD definition. So one key thing to note is that this differs from the McKinney-Vento definition and specifically does not include folks living in doubled up situations, but it can give you a picture of kind of what's going on in your community at large beyond students. So this includes families, individuals, does include youth and young adults and others. And this is typically drawn from the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, or from point in time counts, which some of you are probably familiar with. The data that's available in each of the sites here is going to vary by location, but typically you'll be able to see data about the overall kind of counts of how many folks are experiencing homelessness in your community. Sometimes you'll be able to break that down by kind of population types, so families with children or youth and young adults. And then you'll also typically be able to see what kind of types of support. So how many folks are in shelters, how many folks are in transitional housing, things like that. And sometimes you'll be able to see outcomes as well. Then if we want to go to the next slide, and this is a link to each of the resources. So this is broken down by the major continuums of care, or COCs, in the state. So there's about 6 across the state. And you can see that we've got some links here for you for several of the counties, and the balance of the state, which is the 33 counties not represented here. And I think that's all I've got for you today. I'll turn it back over to Joey.
Thanks, Matt. I do want to highlight a question that we got in the chat from Mara Lee asking, so the OSPI pulls the McKinney-Vento count on October 1st for theirs, and wondering kind of where building changes numbers come from. Is that like a same day report, point in time count?
Yeah, thank you, Maryan. Good question. So all of these resources are going to be different dates. So that's something you want to really key in on when you're looking at the resources, is make sure that you're paying attention to what date the data was pulled. Our reports that we do are based on OSPI data. We get data through a data sharing agreement from OSPI. Those cover the full year typically, so they're not October 1st counts. But our data will tend to be a little bit behind the data that OSPI has. And then I'd also recommend, if you're in a district, consult your internal data team, because they're going to have the most up-to-date and the most detailed information.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So Matt will be around for the rest of the training. If more questions arise, and we will have kind of group discussion time for any other questions that you can think of. Before I introduce our next speakers, I do want to call on my coworker Herdt to give a bit of an introduction on how we got here today.
Thank you, Joey. Just learned so much from my colleague, Matt. I appreciate it. I'm gonna have to switch something. Sorry, my laptop is acting up. So I wanted to just give a little shout out on how this idea of having a data capturing training. When I first came to Building Changes, I had a portfolio called Schoolhouse Washington Project, and Tukwila School District was on my portfolio. And in a conversation with Julie and Maryan, which started from I wonder, what if, and now we're in the let's try aspect of things. What if we had a statewide training where we can connect with other McKinney-Vento liaisons around how we've captured data in our experience? I used to do McKinney-Vento in other school districts in South King County. And so we are, just swapping out our experiences and what we'd love to share with others, and seeing what works and what doesn't, and how we can strengthen relationships with our data teams within the district office. And so many conversations of that kind of led us to where we're at today. And so I just really wanted to give a special shout out to Julia and Maryan and their team at Tukwila, just a whole holistic approach of team there, like their business center and their data, and even their executive cabinet leadership team have just really been on board in our partnership. And so that's where it started, an idea, a conversation that led us to an actual implementation. And so kind of like a little shameless plug, if there's other districts and you have ideas and you just want to strategize and see where we can take it, Building Changes is here for that. We love to do some trial and error, and we're open to strategizing and seeing what works. If you will all come, if you build it, they will come, is what somebody had told me. And so here we are, 64 people in attendance to hear about what works in other school districts when capturing the data. So I appreciate everyone. I appreciate the 2 other school districts that are going to highlight their amazing data capturing work. I just want to share a little snippet of how this idea of this training occurred.
Yeah. Thank you, Herdt. I don't think I could do a better introduction, so I'm gonna pass it over to Julie and Maryan. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because they have slides that they are going to share on theirs.
Okay, let's see, let me go ahead and share our screens. Okay, well, thank you so much for that introduction. We have been just blessed to be able to work with Herdt and Building Changes in doing these amazing things. They've just made it possible for us to, the visions that we had to become a reality. So we are just really excited about that. My name is Julie Herdt, and I have worked for the Tukwila School District for 10 years, and this is my 6th year in this position.
Hi, everyone. I am Maryan Abdow. Thank you, Herdt. It's been nice working with Building Changes. We are always bragging about our partnership to everyone, so thank you. I have been working at the district for 7 years, but in this position for 5 years. We're the quality engagement specialists. We can just, our school is very small, and we would just like you guys to understand like how we do things are a little different than other school districts. So as we are the quality engagement specialists, we are divided in the elementary and secondary level. I am the secondary level, Julie is our elementary. And we do McKinney-Vento foster care and family engagement. And we are the district and the building contact point person.
This is just a little bit of information about how, oh, sorry. Let me go back to that. Okay, so this is just a little bit of information about how what categories our McKinney-Vento families fall under, and then also how many are at each school. We have about roughly 10% of our student population is qualified as McKinney-Vento. So we have a very high needs district. So even though we are a small district, just under 2,800 students, we have a large percentage of families that are facing housing instability. And so far this year, we already have 192 students. Last year, in just the last 2 months alone, we had we added about 80 students that families that reached out for services that qualified for McKinney-Vento. So we capture our data in a kind of a the way that's easiest for us is by just using a spreadsheet. So we use Google Sheets, and it changes a little bit every year because depending on what people are asking for, what information people are asking for, we can alter our spreadsheet. So we just develop this, readjust it every year to meet our needs. And this is just kind of a basic generic spreadsheet that so you can kind of see what we're doing. I can look, the nice thing about having this on Google Sheets is I can look at anytime somebody calls me up and asks me how many students do I have at the elementary level that are McKinney-Vento, I can tell them instantly through my spreadsheet. I can also, in my tabs at the bottom, I have schools, have it by schools, and I can also tell them a direct number for that particular school if I have a principal or administrator for that school calling me. Some of the things that we do, like we call all of our families for certain programs like Spirit of Giving, Student Family Stability Initiative, which is housing, Snack Pack, which is weekend snack pack. So we always keep track of that information, which school they're at, their student ID, of course, name, and then this is just the basic information. We also want to keep track of their siblings so that we know who is in each family. And I know that I'm working with a family or Maryan's working with a family, and we need to collaborate on that and do case reviews. We also keep track of if they have children that are under school aged. This helps us when it comes time to enroll in ECAP or Head Start also, and then also with our other programs that we have available when we work with work partners like Eastside Baby Corner, those type of things, age, date of birth, grade. So this just kind of goes through the information. Teacher, for me at the elementary level, that's important because they only have one teacher at that time. Absences, so that's kind of color coded. I know that if it's in pink, that's somebody I need to watch their absences to see if they increase. If it's in red, I need to reach out to that family and make sure that they're getting the services that they need and put a plan in place to make sure that they're making it to school every day. We also keep track of special education, ELL, high cap, and then of course the type of housing, and then addresses, emails, parents' information, and then their home language. So this is where we write down their home language that is available when we first are working with them, whatever Skyward. But as I've worked with families, they may be fluent in English, and so that'll change. So it just gives me an idea of how I need to reach out to that family, and then the date that they started, their status started, whether I did the intake food form, and if I requested transportation, and what date I did it. So if they're doing mileage reimbursement, I had a family request transportation, but they're in the walking area. So that just tells me that, yes, they wanted transportation, but in case they ask me about that again. It also gives me, I put down what they've been referred to so far this year, so that I can keep track of whether they've been able to access those services or not. And then previous addresses. So as our students are moving around from place to place, and we need to reset up transportation, or they are now in permanent housing, that's something that we want to keep track of that information. And that also helps me at the end of the school year, because, for example, if I have a family that has gained permanent housing during that year, I'll put a note in there. So they have their own apartment as of November 1st. That lets me know that when I'm reaching out to families at the beginning of next year to requalify and see what services that they need, that they were in their own apartment last year. And we want to make sure, are they still in that apartment, or is that something that they were not able to keep?
So this is secondary. It's pretty much the same as what Julie and I collect, but because we are representing two different set of students. So with mines, I color coordinate all my seniors. So you'll see the purple are seniors, because I do follow up with seniors to make sure that they are graduating, they're on track to graduation. If they're not, like, what can we do to make sure that they are able to graduate, because it is important for students, all students, but especially for McKinney-Vento, it is vital for them to have their diploma as they move forward in life. What else if you can move forward? I won't talk about what Julie has already kind of mentioned. Julie, if you can slide over, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. So I collect, beside housing type that Julie mentioned, I also collect unaccompanied. So I make sure that if my students are unaccompanied, I am giving them more attention, because I know those students are not connected to any guardian or any family. Either they moved out or they were kicked out, they're all on their own. So for those students, I want to check in as often as possible, make sure that I'm working with the counselors to make sure that they're checking in, to create a team around our unaccompanied, because they can easily fall through the cracks and not know what happened the next day. So I keep track of that. We do, like Julie said, we do keep track of transportation. The languages is really easy to keep track of, because you don't want to call a family and say what language you're speaking when we already know, and we can just be ready with an interpreter for that. We do the intake, parents, guardians. For me, it's because sometimes our students that are unaccompanied would choose someone that they're staying with that they want to be representative of their education piece. So I will put them as a guardian, or we have foster care students that are also in a McKinney-Vento situation. Then it's not the biological parent, then I'll have biological parents, because they're still involved in some capacity, and then we'll have their guardians. So everything else is pretty much what Julie have said. I don't want to go over it. We do collect certain information, and these information, like Julie said, it's really easy when someone says, hey, is this student McKinney-Vento? I don't have to go on Skyward, even though Skyward can be great in some areas, but not all the time. So then I can just click on my spreadsheet. And the one thing I really love about the spreadsheet is every morning I come in, I know my students and who I'm working with. Each school, we have different tabs. So when I come in, like today, I'm at Foster High School. So I'll click on Foster and I know all my students and where they're located, what's happening. And instead of just kind of like they're floating around in Skyward. And so it just creates like, these are the students that I have to make sure that they are taken care of under the McKinney-Vento program. So it's really straightforward. You can collect as much. It's easier when you're trying to get grants or questions asked. You're never really dropping the ball on a student because you see them every morning, all their names in your face. And I think that keeps it kind of like right there, like you know them, you know by name who they are, where they're located, age, everything, language. So I really like that personal piece about it. Yeah, I think pretty much that's what we do. And this is just an extra thing we decided as a team to do, not something we just like collecting way more than we need, but it comes handy. So yeah.
And as we said before, so we are the building points of contact and the district points of contact. So we have 3 elementary schools and a middle and a high school. And so Maryan works at the high school 3 days a week and at the middle school 2 days a week. And then I'm rotate through my elementaries too. So then I'm at like one of my elementary schools every Thursday. I'm at one every Tuesday, and I'm at a different one where my main office is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And they know, and the staff knows that if they have an emergency, they can reach out to me and I can be at that school within 5 minutes. So so I have families that will come into the school and they'll ask for me, and it just makes it really easy the way that we're divided. So we're just, like I said, really fortunate. We also, with doing family engagement, we're able to help with families that before they lose housing. So that we do a lot of helping families with reaching out to community resources to prevent them from losing housing in the first place.
Yeah, so this pretty much really works great for our small school district. We are a lot of, especially for the middle and the high school, it's walking distance. My students will walk to the middle school or vice versa. And I'm like, oh, great, you're here. So, and then, so it's really, it works pretty well for us. If anyone has questions, we'd be more than happy to answer some questions if we do have time, Joey, but if not, then yeah.
Definitely. So I wanted to highlight a couple that are in the chat. You already answered Mary Lee's question about building points of contact and all of that. There's been some requests for sharing that template spreadsheet. I know that you have it in Google Forms right now, but maybe if you all want to, drop your email in the chat so folks can connect with you for that spreadsheet link, or if you're comfortable just sharing the I don't remember what we landed on for how we were going to share that template. So I'll kind of pass it to you for that. And then you did mention Skyward, but there was a request for what student information system is your district using?
Yeah, we use Skyward, and we have different reports, that we've built in Skyward where we can pull like attendance. I can pull attendance for all of my McKinney-Vento students, weekly, monthly, whatever. I already have the report built. So whenever I need to pull an attendance and check that out, I can. I'm on the attendance teams at the elementary schools. So a lot of times I'll know already if they're, either from me checking the attendance or from me being on that team, and they've contacted me because they also have contacted me for students that are not McKinney-Vento that might need that resource, and that might be the reason why that they're having issues with getting to school. So we do have a bunch of reports already built in Skyward, but the thing is when administration comes to us and asks us, okay, how many students do you have? Like Maryan and I were saying, and with this, I can tell them instantly, like 30 seconds, I can look at there and tell them, this is how many students we have. And I can break it down by school and have any information that they need.
And at the secondary, we also have something called a team for foster for our middle school and high school. It's called early warning indicators. And I sit on those teams with the counselor, social worker, and any of the disciplines. So what we have is to see attendance, academic, and behavior, and kind of see where all students rank. So for each week we have, or each month, 20 students on that high list. If they're McKinney-Vento, then I'm working with the rest of the team to make sure that we are helping that student and talking to parents, seeing what it's going on as a team. I think it's like sometimes it's 6, 7 to 11 people that will come. And if we have to do a care team, we're inviting teachers, parents, and kind of like talking about what can we do to support the student. So we have different styles of making sure that their academic and their attendance is on track.
Yes, I see somebody asking, we do have homeroom. So that is available. The thing about homeroom is, I don't think that homeroom is the most user-friendly. You have to build that report and pull those students out. So it's, once you have that built for the year, it's easy to pull out test scores and stuff, but I just don't see homeroom as user-friendly. I do pull those reports every time that the scores are uploaded into homeroom, but we everything, we try to keep most of the stuff that we need right on that spreadsheet, and we do a lot of, a big strategy for us is filling basic needs, because and we work a lot with families and students on fulfilling those basic needs so that they can concentrate on their academic success.
All right, so there were a couple other questions in the chat. We have just a couple of minutes, so I want to just kind of clarify. I think I was a little confusing earlier. So I dropped Julie and Maryan's email in the chat, so you have that access. I know they had it on their thank you slide that we saw briefly. So feel free to reach out to them if you're interested in kind of that tracking template. You can also reach out to me and I can make that connection. And then we have about 1 more minute. So if anyone has a question in the chat, or you have one more burning question before we move to our next presenter, I'm going to open it up for one more question. Group selected. All right. I'm not seeing any burning questions, so I think that means that they were mostly answered. Thank you, Julie and Maryan, so much. As always, a pleasure to share space with you, and thank you for showing your awesome tracking system. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, so bear with me while I get it all set up. All righty, so excited to introduce our next guest speaker. We have Jesus joining us from Clover Park. And how we got connected to Jesus for this presentation is we were kind of doing our, asking around to a lot of the districts we work with and what their data tracking looks like and all of that. And I just kept hearing Jesus and his spreadsheet. So I had to find out what that meant, and we were blown away, and I'm excited for you all to learn more about what Jesus is doing with his data tracking and how it kind of connects to the bigger picture at the district level. So I'll pass it off to you, Jesus, and let me know when you want the next slide.
Thank you so much. You can go ahead and, I believe, see what's here. So yes, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm humbled. I think Tukwila did a great job, and I'm probably going to build on a lot of the practices that they are using with their data tracking and things like that. And so my name is Jesus Villegas. I work for Clover Park School District in Lakewood, Washington, and I am the Student Services Support Specialist is my official title. I used to oversee McKinney-Vento, foster care truancy, and the Title VI Native American program. And this year was great. We were able to, I will show you how I use data to improve certain programs, for example, hiring additional McKinney-Vento staff. Next slide, please. First, I want to share why gathering additional quantitative and qualitative data has been helpful in my experience as a McKinney-Vento liaison. One area all liaisons have been involved in is in needs assessments for grants. Sometimes needs assessment and data gathered through the process is also helpful to determine if changes in programs or capacity is needed. And gathering and disaggregating additional data also helps find gaps in resources or services, as well as inequities in different demographics. Qualitative data, such as actual experiences and stories of students or families experiencing homelessness, can be used to help advocate for better supports, additional resources, or partnerships. And of course, we all know the importance of confidentiality. So a good practice is to request prior permission from families whose stories you might want to use, as well as keeping names anonymous. Qualitative and additional demographical information is also helpful to try to provide other holistic support that a student or family may need. For example, connecting a Native American family to tribal resources or military families to base or veteran resources. Next slide, please. In my work, I have found and used different data sources which help provide a more comprehensive and bigger picture of different factors affecting homelessness. Sources include using the school district student information management system. In my district, we use Skyward. And OSPI also has a great data system that I frequently use in EDS called Tableau. And I also use the Washington State Report Card website. I have also collaborated or found data from different state and county and city entities to help provide a bigger picture of different community factors, as well as gather qualitative data or information from students and families that I work with. Next slide. One way that I gather information from students and families experiencing homelessness is through an intake process or form that I have used when initially identifying McKinney-Vento families. I use this as a tool to help me identify and qualify for McKinney-Vento services, as well as identifying individual needs and find supports or resources that may better serve a student or family. This is a tool used by the district liaison, and information is kept confidential except for basic information needed to provide different services or to advocate for the family on their behalf. Families are not required to submit or sign any forms in order to qualify for services. Basic information to help identify a possible eligible student can be provided to the liaison in many different ways. And families also do not have to give any information they do not want to share or feel might jeopardize their living situation. In those cases, additional questions or options to provide info are used to help verify eligibility in accordance with the McKinney-Vento Act. Next. Once a student is qualified in our district, they are coded in our Student Information Management System, or Skyward. We enter basic information on how the student is eligible in the homeless tab or section, which will then highlight an H code at the top of the student profile screen, so schools can easily see which of their students have been identified. This helps them know if there should be additional considerations or processes to follow for different issues or to provide certain services. For example, if a student is missing a lot of school, they may see the H code and they reach out to the liaison and see, oh, what's going on? This child, we haven't seen the child for 3 days. The liaison may say, oh, that's because bus had to be rerouted. They're awaiting buses. We're trying to connect them with a way to get to school in the meantime, or something like that. Next. So in addition to the Skyward, we also created an Excel log with more comprehensive data and information. This log is mainly used by the district liaison and other school designated points of contact to easily track and provide different quantitative demographic data of identified students and other notes or information that can be helpful for advocacy. Figuring out which services students need, grant writing, needs assessments, etc. Our Excel log was created with gray columns that auto sum, so we can easily add up, say, for example, how many males, females, how many of each ethnicity. And all of the data currently is manually entered, and we have been exploring other ways to facilitate gathering data, entering, and all of that. Next. The Excel log also includes information such as when, where, and frequency of mobility, reasons they lost housing, district programs that students may be eligible for, McKinney-Vento categories, as well as types of referrals and services that are provided by the district liaison. This additional information has been helpful for needs assessments and to find gaps in services or resources so we can explore improving programs, services, or seeking new partnerships or community resources. And next, thank you. Here's an example of a local county homeless data that I have used in the past. This helps show the bigger picture of what challenges families are experiencing and other community factors, such as affordable housing, income, and more. This has helped show district staff and community organizations the realities and many barriers that families are experiencing, and that more comprehensive solutions are needed to remove different barriers. For example, you can easily see on this slide that lack of affordable housing, higher rent increases, the medium household incomes are major barriers, And I like to use this to explain that even if a family is working hard to obtain new housing after becoming homeless, they will face challenges that are mostly out of their control. Next. Here are a few examples of data that I have used that can be obtained through the OSPI Tableau portal and Washington State Report Card website. Through Tableau, designated school and district staff have access to comprehensive and easy to understand data on a variety of student factors, including homelessness. The portion that provides data on students experiencing homelessness can be desegregated in different ways, including attendance rates, exclusionary disciplinary actions, and grades, and can help schools and districts identify disparities or gaps. Washington State Report Card also provides a lot of the same data, which is publicly available and allows you to also compare data between other school districts in the state. Next. With all of those data resources and sources that I've mentioned, we then try to create graphs that are a bit easier to understand and see to show different trends, including total number of McKinney-Vento students, then desegregated by race, ethnicity, other categories such as unaccompanied, students with disabilities, ELL or MLL, and military affiliated, as well as by different McKinney-Vento categories. We regularly use these types of graphs for presentations to schools, district departments, and community organizations. And certain data is redacted as required by FERPA laws. And we regularly, every couple of months or so, update the graphs with new identified students. Here are a few more ways we present data by desegregating by different reasons families have become homeless or qualified for McKinney-Vento services, as well as the type of referrals or services that have been provided. We also collaborate with individual schools and programs to track McKinney-Vento student academic, behavior, and attendance data to see where additional supports or services can be provided to improve student outcomes. Next. And as I mentioned, we use a lot of this data and information to help advocate for additional supports and services, including with community organizations. We share the demographic data as well as the different challenges, barriers, and needs identified students and families are experiencing. I have done these types of presentations to local organizations who have increased or targeted their resources or services to our district or individual schools. And feedback has included appreciating a deeper look at the problems and needs that is public available by the state or federal data. And then also providing more localized data and personal stories sometimes. That's very helpful. They appreciate that and kind of motivates them to say, hey, we want to partner and meet these needs for these students. Next. And now I know this all may seem like a lot of work and effort, and I will honestly say that it can be. So I will also share some ways that my district and I have worked to try to facilitate the work as much as possible. I'm sure many of you are familiar and experience challenges with staff capacity, collaboration, and sometimes lack of training. In the past few years, our district has prioritized funding to improve capacity by hiring additional McKinney-Vento staff. And a lot of the data that was gathered helped show the district the need for that. We also have regular collaboration with different departments such as IT and assessment who help gather and put together different data. I personally also collaborate with and learn from other professionals within the district that maybe know how to create things in Excel or different things to try to help. So I'm not always trying to research and recreate something that maybe somebody else knows or has had. I know there are also other companies that have data management systems that work well with McKinney-Vento programs that other districts can explore. And with that, I will take any questions if there is time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesus. We have a few minutes, absolutely. So you kind of answered Marilee's question a little bit, but I see her raising her hand, so I'll let her share herself.
Thank you so much. And to everybody that's spoken, thank you so much. I mean, it's great information. I think a lot of us are doing some data collection and tracking, but I love your innovative templates and ideas. I know how much time it takes to put that information in a template, so my hat goes off to you. I am also, Jesus, wondering about, let me take my hand down here. I'm looking at KNHIMSS software, social solutions, Apricot. Can you tell us more about that? One of the things I've been advocating for is, and Joey knows this, is, you know, instead of just using Google and Excel, are there other kinds of software programs out there that would make it easier for us to collect all of this data? Sorry about this, and all the programs that are being, you know, called for in terms of our need to make those referrals. So
Yes,
sorry, my phone went off in the middle of
no
this.
problem. Thank you. That is a great question, and something that every year, because they take time after the second year, and I've expanded and finally got the Excel log to kind of do what I wanted to do. Like I said, things added, so I don't manually add things anymore. A lot of the when we initially identify student, you know, that takes the most time because we entering that initial information. But after that, it's just check marks. So it's okay, today we provided clothing. So it's just a check mark here or number 1 here, whatever. So it becomes easier after students have been identified. But yes, there are programs. I have done some research with the HIMSS software, which they have a system that I believe is web-based. And it actually supposedly, you know, I don't know if with Skyward, but will work with your district's existing student management systems like Skyward, for example, and somehow kind of gather those pieces, at least the demographic, like which student names, grades, and all of that from the system itself, and then provides you a lot of that information that I gather in my Excel. It gives you sections for a lot of that as well in that system, which I think really helps. It was I was very interested in it, and we were exploring when we were writing grants recently. But one of the main concerns here, and I've heard from other districts, is the FERPA concern. And okay, you know, well, is this going to be web-based, and they're going to be confidential information that maybe other people can hack or have access to? So they that's one reason why our district currently is not decided not to do that this school year. So, but I'm always exploring ways, because I do know about that, you know, that you want to spend as much time as possible serving students instead of like paperwork and all of that. But it is helpful to have the additional data, we'll say.
Thank you so much.
All right, we do have a little bit more time if anyone else has any questions for Jesus. All right, Jesus, I'm taking that as we're very thorough and answered everyone's questions. So that's great. Here is Jesus's contact information. Again, feel free to reach out to me as well and I can help connect out further. Our next thing that we are moving into is actually a break. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Before I let you all go, though, I want to drop the post-training SurveyMonkey link into the chat. If you can open it up on your desktop now, then you don't have to worry about remembering to do it later. You can just do it at the end of the training. If you are seeking clock hours, you will have to do the PD enroller evaluation that will be posted after attendance is logged. And with that, I'm going to head to the break slide, and I will see you all at 11 a.m. Great. Let me get started then. All right, welcome back from break. I was reflecting on I think how awesome this training has been going. We've had some really incredible guest speakers giving some pretty wonderful examples of what they're doing in their district. So big shout out. And I'm excited for our next guest speaker as well to continue that trend. So excited to introduce Sarah Miller from Spokane Public Schools. Sarah is going to run us through a little bit about the data system, data collection that they use in their district, as well as how they are integrating student and community voice.
Hi,
I'll pass
y'all.
it off to you.
Hey, thank you so much. And it's really weird to see myself as only myself right there. That was crazy. Okay, so I am from Spokane Public Schools, and I just love data and trying to see how we can use that to best support the work that we do day in and day out. Next slide, Joey. Just a quick snapshot about Spokane schools as opposed to Tukwila. We're ginormous. We have about 30,000 students in our district each school year, and about 4% of our total student population is served by our McKinney-Vento program. We are lucky enough that our McKinney-Vento program is separate from our foster care program. So if you're looking for information on how they're doing, I have no idea because that's managed through a completely different department, which is both good and very difficult for us because they are so merged. Just some other facts there. Our Herdt team has 6 paid staff, and I should say that our program name is Herdt, so I use Herdt and McKinney-Vento interchangeably, so sorry about that. But we have 6 paid staff, myself as the program overseer, McKinney-Vento liaison. We have an intake and transportation specialist. And then we have 4 what we call community specialists who are out in our secondary schools. I'm lucky enough right now, I have 1 intern and 1 to be coming on here in January from our local university who are Master of Social Work students coming to help us out. So we're a pretty big team. And we use data pretty regularly. Next slide, please. This graphic just kind of shows what data we gather from which people and how that goes. Hopefully the circle for you guys is really representative about how one part of our data just completely flows into the other part. And my hope is to be able to demonstrate that for you guys. The outside boxes are who is gathering that data or who we're gathering that data for. And the inside are the methods in which that we gather that. So to start, we'll start with our smallest group first, that McKinney-Vento students. Next slide, please. Our genius data people up on the 4th floor above me use Tableau and their licenses and their access to that Tableau information to build into our district's school data tools early warning system. I do not have the brain power to use Tableau or not, so they create those reports for us, and it automatically feeds and populates information from PowerSchool into these reports. So this first one is what is called a high risk report. So any school can see this information, and the data gods have created a Herdt program school. So all of the kids in our district who are part of our program are able to be isolated out. And it looks at the 3 ABC categories are really the biggest things. Which kiddos have current Fs happening? How many period absences? Did they have discipline issues last week? And you can see it kind of color codes that information for us, with red being those really at-risk situations, and down to green, which is kind of status quo. This is pulled from real-time data from our PowerSchool, so the grading and the attendance from there. So it does fluctuate from week to week. And it just helps us look at what's happening for a particular student at any given time and where we need to be aware of what's happening, and when our community specialist needs to be more attentive perhaps to meeting with that student. In a perfect world, all of the data systems align and everything works properly, and our folks are looking at this data about every week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Next slide, please. This is our outcome form. We use, our community specialists use these to take the information from that high risk report and kind of turn it into a longer term what's going on for that particular student. This is used in our secondary schools. We do not have the manpower to do that for all of our schools. Because we run about, well, right now I have 746 students identified in our program. So we just don't have the capacity to do that. But this, our community specialists take the information for each individual McKinney-Vento student and put it into this format. Those outcome checks, if you have your magnifying glass out and can see that, we use that to really identify like the top 10% of our students who are really struggling. And those students who are really struggling go on to that next level of intervention, and we're using the check and connect model. So on the second page of this outcome form is our check and connect log. And again, with your magnifying glass, if you look really closely, there's like A, B, C on each week data. So then they're taking that high risk report information and handwriting it in so that they can look at it over the course of however long they're serving that particular student and making notes. So these performance indicators are really tracked for our individual students on a weekly basis for that top 10% and on a about 3 times a year for all other students at minimum, sometimes more. Next slide. Sorry, guys. Our data team has built in Tableau and then pulled these wonderful reports over where we can look at performance indicators for our program whole and for each specific school that we have. We have 54 different school buildings, so it's a massive undertaking to be able to look at the information for each individual school and different programs. But at elementary, we're tracking their English language proficiencies, and that is defined by the whatever series of standardized tests that the state has identified for a particular year is what is creating that. So our English language, our math proficiency, and then looking at our chronically absent students. The data that you see here is specific for our McKinney-Vento program. And like I said, we can take it for just our program. We can look at each individual school. We can look at our program within each school using some drop-down menus on each side. The same data is looked at our middle school level with the addition of passing classes is added on into that, since elementary doesn't track attendance that way. Doesn't track their grading on such a consistent basis. That is not looked at the elementary level. Our high school indicators are much there are more of them. So we're looking at that absences, passing classes. We have our graduation rates, and then proficiency at different levels or at different subject matters. We have our discipline. It doesn't show on here because that's way too big. But these reports are designed for our community specialists to really look at not just that individual student, but that next step, what's happening in the schools that they're particularly serving. And because they all serve multiple schools, it helps them to identify which schools are struggling the most, where I need to be able to spend more time at that school to support the overall environment. Next slide, please. So that data from the data system that our data gods create feeds into a quarterly report for each of those community specialists. So they take that real-time data and put it into that longitudinal report and look at things like the number of students they're checking and connecting with versus our general Herdt program supports, how many kids have dropped, how many kids have transferred out, the type of housing categories, and those key performance indicators at each particular school. So they complete these reports on a quarterly basis to just really frame themselves in the work that they're doing at each school. I think, ooh, I was like, did I say everything I meant to say? Sorry. Next slide. I think we're trucking right along. The next step from our individual student to our community specialist is me as the liaison looking at the program whole. So our wonderful data people have created this sheet. And again, that teeny tiny writing there on that left-hand side is the listing of schools that we have. So looking at the number of students at each school, what grade level our students are in on the chart on the right-hand side, our percentage of students identified in our Herdt program, and then it goes down. You can see two categories where we're looking at students who have an IEP, who are involved in ELD services. It goes on to look at 504 plans, high cap, and whatnot to be able to give us those percentages as well. So I use this report to create a program point in time report, looking at our numbers along with a file audit. Sorry, I thought I had my phone off. And then we can look at the overall program. Are our supports in the correct places for schools? Are we seeing the data that we want, that we're supporting in the correct ways? What does our transportation trends look like? This point in time report is actually 8 pages long that we put together. If you want to go to the next slide, there's some other data points that we have in that report. Where we're able to take the data from each individual quarterly report from those homeless community specialists and feed it into this overall program view of what's happening. The overall percentage of chronically absent, looking at our program versus the total district program. Are we on track? Are we needing more support? Are our kids passing classes? Are our kids having more exclusionary discipline consequences than their housed partners, and whatnot? And then the second, well, actually, the 5th chart there is really looking at the level of support that we're offering at each high school level, whether that's that check and connect intervention or the general McKinney-Vento, and also comparing students who have dropped and transferred out. Next slide, please. My latest kick has been trying to solicit more information from our community, and that being our school staff that we're supporting, our students and families, as well as our community agency partners. So one of our interns took on a big project for us to create some needs assessment surveys, not in that format for the McKinney-Vento program, but for us to identify what those needs are. We did these surveys using Microsoft Forms. First year was just our district staff to see if we could actually create something that was usable. And then last year we had one survey that went out to our district staff, and then another went out to students, families, and community partners. I'm sorry, that's not listed, to make sure that the quantitative data that we were collecting was really in alignment with the qualitative data that our community was talking to us about. Right now, our biggest limitation in these surveys is really our lowish response rate. We had about 8% of the surveys that we sent out come back to us. So that's pretty in line with surveys that are sent out, but lower than we would like to get a really good picture of what's happening. The next two slides show the different survey results from last year. Joey, can we look at the next slide? So the questions that we had about 8 questions in each of our surveys that we sent out, relating to what grade levels do you think we should target our support? What were the highest areas of need of support at the school? What areas were the highest need of support outside of school? What's something we did well? What's something we need to work on? What services did you access? Were our questions. So our students and families, you could see they, on the first pie chart, really focused in on needing the support at that secondary level. That's really indicative of who actually filled out the survey. It was sent to some of our high schooler, or it was sent to all of our high schoolers and families there. So that kind of tells me that it's the high schoolers and people who are actually responding to the survey. They identified the supports that they needed at school were those meals at school and the transportation as the top 2 things that they needed. And outside of school, they need housing and those food and basic needs. So this is in alignment with really the referrals that we're doing and the work that we're doing to get those supports in place at the school. If you go to the next survey slide, for our district staff, you could see in that pie chart more elementary folks are needed based on for our elementary or our district staff. What's interesting to know is we have 35 elementary buildings, 6 high school buildings, 6 middle school buildings. So that could be just a sheer picture of who completed that and where that support is needed. So did they identify just they wanted support in their building or their program? So that's really interesting. Our district staff identified a lack of parent or guardian or adult engagement as the biggest need that is faced at the school. And if you remember, our students and families are saying we need food and we need transportation. So there's a discrepancy in what is the highest need thing. Our district staff felt mental health services, family issues and a lack of housing were the biggest supports outside of school as well. So some of that is in alignment. So what those differences really are showing is that our program needs to continue that work about making sure our kids are connected to the free meals, the weekend backpack food programs, that we're getting our transportation in place as quickly as possible. But we also need to work on finding ways to engage our parents and our families in the services that we're providing, and how can we do a good job with that, and how can we explore some options. So next slide, please. So this is just to recapture that circle at the beginning, really on how we're using our data. So we have our performance indicators for students feed into a quarterly report, feed into a point in time report that fulfill our needs assessment and our program planning. But then our program planning, then on the flip side, that needs assessment really tells us we need to work on that food, transportation, and engagement from our families. And so we've put that plan into place, and now we're going back to that data to see if we were able to put something in place that that really is impactful back down to those performance indicators. So just making sure that we're matching up in all of our ways and whatnot. And our advisory, our district started an advisory team. So we invite community partners, district staff to be a part of our team to look at all of this data to help us with that program planning and really helping us determine where to put our staff and how we're supporting our students and families. And that's all I have, you guys. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was so amazing. I'm just also loving how we were able to see examples from, really small school districts to really big ones today. I think that hopefully everyone in this space was able to kind of see your school district in our presenters today. So I'm going to unspotlight Sarah. Oh, maybe it already did unspotlight you. I don't know. And does anyone have any questions for Sarah? I do see one in the chat from Herdt asking about if Check and Connect is a model that's being used throughout the district or just in the McKinney-Vento program.
There are several different programs within our district that use Check and Connect. We have achievement or intervention specialists that also use it at different high schools based on their school improvement plans and different things, but it is not used consistently as an MTSS intervention across everything. It is program specific.
Can I ask, thanks, Sarah. Before MTSS, I used to use the Check and Connect model when I did case management in the school building. Not separating it from MTSS, but did you find one specifically from McKinney-Vento students better than the other? I know MTSS is more of a whole, more staff participation in the template of the case management, but more of your one-on-one. Did you feel like the Check and Connect template was, I don't even want to say easy, but did you prefer one or the other?
We find we get lost in the MTSS world that's happening out at each of the schools because we are so big. And so we're lost within that as one of the supports. And we find that just doing being a part of those models really gets us into duplicating services that are being provided by another intervention specialist or another community group that's in with the school. So for us, just like one feeds into another. So not one's any more important, but definitely Check and Connect is helping us keep better track of the data for individual students. But we need the other layer to really identify the students that we're serving to ensure that they have some support from somebody within the district. I don't know if that really answers the question or makes sense, but.
It makes sense, especially if you're someone that's doing both MTSS and Check and Connect, and if you're in the building versus, yeah. So thank you. I was wanting to get how you feel about the two templates.
All right, we have a few more minutes. Does anyone else have any questions for anything or for Sarah related to anything that she shared today? All right, I've seeing one pop up in the chat here from Jonathan. So Sarah, you mentioned that the Herdt program is separate from the McKinney-Vento program, but you also mentioned about your additional team. How was the additional team decided, and was it by region or by levels?
So our Herdt program is separate from our foster care program. Our Herdt program is the name given to our district program for implementing McKinney-Vento. So that is a little bit different. I'm not sure which team.
I meant to put foster care. I put MV. I apologize for that. But I guess I'm just really curious about the staffing capacity and how that was decided for separating those two, and even separating your MV team in a way where you have these, you mentioned the specialists, and just wondering how that how did you decide that, and what are, yeah, just
Yeah.
curious to hear from you.
I have the initial reason our district chose to have a completely separate person for our foster and our McKinney-Vento was simply because of the volume that we're doing. So we couldn't have a liaison really providing the level of service that's needed, because I mean, we're already at 730 for just our McKinney-Vento program. So that is managed, the foster care program is managed in a little bit different way, although it's very similar. So it was just a volume issue. Our additional team and our homeless community specialists have just been a progression and a brainchild that I had when I first started. This is my 12th year in the district. So slowly, as I was able to get my feet under me and really understand McKinney-Vento, our district was applying for, we received the McKinney-Vento grant. We also received the HSSEP grant. So how many community specialists we have is in direct relation to how much funding we have. And whatnot. About my 4th year in, I advocated to up our Title I homeless set aside to have our first initial homeless community specialist. And she has been around ever since. And because we use that model through the Title I homeless set aside for one person, at that time, we decided it was our highest need school, our school that had a super high percentage of students who were identified as unaccompanied youth. And that's their primary support group, and then all of the other students in their school. And as we get more funding, we're able to add in more community specialists, and essentially using that point in time data, the number of students, percentage of student population, and percentage of unaccompanied homeless youth really helps us know which school gets the next homeless community specialist, I guess is a crude way to say that.
Great, thank you. All right. I think I'm going to move forward. If you think of other questions, there will be more time. So looking at just a few key takeaways from today when thinking about data collection and use. So small steps in looking at your data can make a big difference. It can help make change happen. You don't have to do it all at once. You know, we gave examples today of some districts who have some pretty built up systems in place, and getting to those systems took time, right? So just understanding that, but it helps to just start looking at your data, start using your data, and share it with those around you, different stakeholders within the district, community partners, obviously keeping FERPA in mind, but and sharing that data can help get buy-in from stakeholders at all levels. Yes, it takes time, but you can tailor how you use data to your district, right? We had examples today from, you know, our small district in Tukwila, we had Clover Park, and we had giant Spokane, right? Very different ways of doing it, but all getting to that same heart of really capturing McKinney-Vento data. You know, there is, I think Sarah did a good job of giving that example of the data gods in her district. So really remembering there is a data team at your district, and they are great folks to start with, to try and partner with, to see what data they're holding that you may not realize is being tracked, or ways to have them start tracking data in a different way. But then also it's helpful, as we've seen, to track your own data, right? So you know what is current. Oftentimes, like was brought up when asking when building changes data is from, right? Oftentimes data is a point in time, right? It's just representing one data collection time, one count. And then that also means that reports may not match each other depending on when that point in time count was done. So if you are holding your own data and tracking it yourself, then you can have a better idea of what is current and what the needs of your community is. And then also it's important, like we saw today, to look at data from different angles. Look at your education, your district data, look at the county, state, local, look at that healthy youth survey, right? bring it all together to get that well-rounded picture. All right. So our next, oh, I forgot to drop, I typed it, but I didn't drop it. There's Sarah's email. Had it typed in the chat, never hit enter. There's Sarah's email again. She's available. Also reach out to me or anyone in building changes. We can connect from there. So our next move is going to be into breakout rooms. We're going to do breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. And we have some guiding questions for these breakout rooms today. I'm going to drop those in the chat now. So that way you can see when you're in the breakout room. But the idea will be go into the space, introduce yourselves, right? And then think about sharing what are your district's data capturing practices. If you are not a district staff member, if you're a community-based organization, think about what data you may collect in your organization or would be interested in kind of being able to communicate with school districts. Do you have a system that's working well, or maybe something that isn't working well that you could see some changes for? And then thinking about the examples that you saw today, are there changes that you want to make to your data collection practices or that you're interested in doing? So this is a collection of guiding questions. You don't have to go through every single one, kind of leaving it up to your breakout group to decide, but wanted to make sure those guiding questions were there. So with that, I'm going to pause the recording and then go into creating the breakout rooms. So give me a moment.